back here at Rana's office with Citywide Mortgages, and we're going to be discussing a very, very, very interesting topic about financing and why some people, even though they're pre-approved, may not get their financing based on certain properties. So Rana, thank you for joining me again. It's been really, really great to see you. And so even with the hot market, buyers feel the pressure of putting subject-free offers, and they're usually pre-approved. They're usually pre-approved for their financing and they feel confident to go in. But Rana's going to speak to why that may not be such a great idea.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this issue because in the particular market that we're in right now, I've seen a lot of clients writing offers and going subject-free, which is very, very dangerous to do, especially when you're buying a strata-type property. I had a situation, actually a few situations that I've encountered where the buyers themselves were solidly pre-approved. They were good buyers, they debt serviced, everything, their income was verifiable and all that kind of stuff. New or older properties, I've seen issues. On some of the newer properties, some of the things that I've seen, that I've encountered, were litigation against the strata corporation. In one instance, the owners were suing the developer who was still building units in the complex, and the owners, their reselling units were selling for less than what the new units were selling for. So what the mortgage insurer looked at, so in this case the people were going with about 10% down, so they required mortgage insurance, which in this case was Genworth. So what Genworth, the mortgage insurer, looked at was the litigation combined with the lower market value made for a decline, no matter how strong these buyers were. So these people, luckily, they had actually put subjects on their offer. So, and they had gotten their offer accepted. Now, the lender that I used happened to use Genworth first. If I had used a lender that maybe used CMHC first, this issue may not have surfaced. It may not have been an issue at all. Now, in this particular case, that issue was enough for my buyers to walk away. They didn't want to own a unit in a building where that issue existed, because they knew that upon resale, unless these things were resolved upon resale, they might have trouble reselling for the price that they want.
That's right.
Another issue that I recently encountered, this was in a complex that was built in 1991, was foundation issues. So in this case, my clients had actually gone in subject-free. They removed their subjects and everything, because the situation though that they were in is one of the buyers, if she wanted to, she could have put a substantial amount of money down so that the mortgage insurance was not a factor. So unless, and even in that situation, we can still encounter problems, because some of the lenders, unless you're putting maybe 35% down, some of the lenders will still want to have an underlying insurance there for some of the strata or condominium type properties. And a lot of the lenders like to use Genworth as their primary mortgage insurer, and that's because Genworth is in the habit of vetting the strata documents, whereas CMHC tends not really to. They sort of leave the onus to do that on the lender, but on the purchaser. So it's more of a buyer beware sort of situation. Like, it's up to you as the purchaser to thoroughly read through all those notes and make sure that you're satisfied with everything, and that you're satisfied that there's no big expenses coming up in the near future.
And that is a really, really good point and great advice as well. Read through the strata documents. You will receive 2 years of minutes, of course, with subjects and so forth, and requesting those. You can also get more than 2 years, so read it through, make sure you're comfortable with the building. Yeah.
And just some other issues that can sometimes surface with buildings is, of course, building envelope issues.
That's right.
That's a big red flag. So, and also to sometimes the buyers of these units will tell me, they'll say, oh, but the strata fixed whatever it was. And unfortunately, the point of view that the mortgage insurer has is, if a strata is presented with choice A, B, and C in that engineering report, if the strata corporation has voted for the cheapest fix, there will be issues on resale. guaranteed there will be issues because
Advice, yeah.
Genworth, if you voted for the cheapest fix, that's a decline right there if it's building envelope issues. If it's like some minor thing, that's different, but chances are if it's in an engineering's report, it's not just painting the walls, it's issues. Appraisals as well can sometimes be an issue because you might be willing to pay $450,000 for this property that's listed at $375,000. But the mortgage insurer, if they do an appraisal of the property, which sometimes happens behind the scenes, they might only say, hey, the most we can think this property is worth is $400,000. So unless you have that money to cover the gap of what you're willing to pay, even though you've been pre-approved for that amount, the property must still be worth that amount.
That's right.
They're not going to, lend you $450,000 on a property that's worth $400,000. So you have to have the deep pockets to cover that sort of cash call emergency if it happens. Now the appraisals, that's pretty rare that we have that issue though. It does happen from time to time, but luckily it's not. It hasn't been too big of an issue at this point in the market.
That's good, yes. Especially with the multiple offers that are happening right now, especially with attached properties.
Totally.
Definitely, please be careful.
And sometimes as well, the type of construction that a building is. For example, there's a few buildings in the Lower Mainland that are post-cable. Is that what it's called? Post-tension cable. Post-tension cable construction. Right now, the banks, if they are familiar with this, whether there's mortgage insurance or no mortgage insurance, if the banks are aware that this particular building has that post-tension cable construction, it's dead. The file is dead. They won't touch it because of the issues that have happened with that type of construction. Even though that type of construction, many engineers say it's superior and it's better and everything else, because there was some issues in Calgary that resulted in some deaths, the banks won't touch it because of possible litigation there. So I have seen some of those buildings still get mortgaged, and basically what had happened was when I had to tell the client, my lenders are saying no because of this, they just happened to maybe get lucky and go somewhere else, and maybe that lender didn't find out about it. So those are definitely issues. And also too, if the strata corporation itself, if they're doing, if they've got a loan for a big project, that can also be an issue depending on the notes that a bank may or may not have on a building. They may be aware of all of these things, and sometimes we are not even aware of any issues with the building until the mortgage insurer tells us about it. So, and even in some situations, even with 20% down, some lenders will still have the file underwritten by the mortgage insurer. Even though the buyer's not paying the premium for the mortgage insurance, the lender will still want them to sort of vet the property first, just to eliminate the risk for the lender. Because in an elevated market, 20% equity is really not that much. When we're seeing people, bidding above asking price in many instances for certain properties, a 20% drop is very, very feasible in some situations. So, I just wanted to talk about that because that's definitely something that I'm becoming concerned about with more and more of these subject-free offers. It's very dangerous to do, and it really is the risk is on the buyer, because I know that myself as a mortgage broker, I'm always forewarning all of my clients of these risks. And unless I feel that they have, the deep pockets where they can bail themselves out of these emergencies, I don't recommend subject-free offers.
No, that's fantastic. Now, is there a situation where you would maybe be comfortable to give your clients the okay on a subject-free offer, and what would that be?
That would be in the instance of, for example, if someone is buying in a newer building where maybe there's been a lot of recent transactions in that building. Like for example, sometimes the realtors will tell me, there's been a lot of sales in this unit, and if those other sales have mortgages, sometimes I'll pull the title on some of the other sales to see where some of those mortgages were placed. to make sure I'm using maybe a similar lender, because I want to make sure that we're not going to, if they're subject free. Now, of course, if they've got 20% or more as a down payment, that too is some assurance, because there are some lenders out there where I know that they won't go to the mortgage insurers at all. It's very unlikely that we'd encounter sort of any issues. Now, newer homes, or a lot of homes in general, if I know that there's no oil storage tank on the property,
Yes.
if I know that it's never been a former grow-op or a drug lab of any sort, if it's not in a floodplain, like I have encountered with homes that if they're a little too close to bodies of water, sometimes that's been an issue for some lenders, but I've always been able to place those ultimately somewhere. But really, I would say unless my client has like 35% down, where I know that, you know, somebody out there is going to give them a mortgage. And I also like to forewarn my clients that, yeah, I might have them pre-approved at like 279 or something, but if I have to go to another lender for various issues, I mean, they may not get the 279. They may be required to pay rates of, you know, what some of these in-between private lenders rates might be, maybe like a 299 if I have to go to a credit union or that kind of thing.
So there's opportunity, there's ways to do it. Definitely speak to a professional. Rana's been in the business a long time, and she's definitely going to be able to help in any way absolutely possible. If there's a will, Rana can do it.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything else you want to add before we...
No, I think that's just something I wanted to really talk about and kind of get the word out there. And,
That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rana. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right.